That night, creeping along the rooftops, Rabbit came upon the hotel, which he'd known had an open-air restaurant and bar at the top with a great view of the city's skyscape. Sure enough, there was Gattoni, sitting alone and drinking what appeared to be Campari. From his coat pocket, Rabbit took out what looked like a black magic marker, but was actually a small telescope. Taking off the cap, which contained its own lens, he pulled out the extendable tube and slid the cap along it to adjust the focus. He watched Gattoni with the patience of a viper for almost an hour and a half, until his prey called for the check and signed it to his room. Rabbit froze the image of the signature in his mind. He had practiced Letizia's voice again and again, experimenting with different words, and was certain he could pass for her when he called the hotel the next day with a furious message for the man at the desk to take down while Gattoni was out. He scribbled out Peter A. Gattoni in his pocket notebook before the accuracy of his memory might fade and blur at the edges. The signature would go on a short note under Mi dispiace, tied to a long-stemmed red rose that Letizia would find outside her door the next morning, and that afternoon, Pete Gattoni would be dead. Fingerprints can only be a pain in the ass if you don't know what you're doing. The police have gotten very clever at discovering the perpetrator of a crime, and if the crime is severe enough, forensics technicians will stop at absolutely nothing to find the guilty. Before killing someone, Rabbit would use an exfoliator to scrape off all loose skin that might flake off at the scene of his crime should anything go wrong. He would brush his hair vigorously to remove any hair that might not be rooted firmly in his scalp. He carried a small spray bottle with what once had been the department store test sample of a cologne, now filled with ammonia to spray on any of his blood that might be spilt. The only way he could be linked to a homicide was if he came in second against his victim and his dead body lay at the scene. The problem with fingerprints, which are left by the skin secretions on almost any surface and can be seen if latent with iodine vapor, non-hadron solution, electrostasis or fluorescent lighting, and even X-ray photography if left on human skin, was that even gloves don't help as much as people think. Hands sweat in latex gloves and the prints will come through before long even if the wearer does not sweat. Especially if he's nervous or has eaten fruit or a salad that day. Leather gloves are as unique as the prints that they cover, being that they come from animals and have wrinkles and scars, pores and stretch marks that are unlike any other, and a visible print from one is as damning as a found bullet or its cartridge. The only thing on earth that can baffle the police and steer them away is a set of latent prints made with someone else's hand. The trouble with that is rather obvious. If that hand had belonged to someone known to be dead, detectives' eyebrows would jump and the investigation would be dramatically intensified. The forensics people, who have nothing else to do with their time, would search even more feverishly, knowing that the criminal they were after was no typical perp. They would find him. Even if there was no way for them to get their man, they would invent a way to get him. Besides, carrying around a severed human hand, even if the original owner's body would never be found, wasn't that easy. Instead, Rabbit had used a koala. Koala bears have prints on their paws so similar to the prints of humans that they have actually been found to confuse forensics investigators. A thin glove made of their paws, or a patchwork of different paws, would allow the killer's hand natural secretions to come through and set the whorls down on a murder weapon and mislead the police. The prints would be run through NCIC or Interpol's computers, but no match would ever be found except maybe in the evidence of some other unsolved case if the killer had gotten careless, cocky, or lazy. Confident that his plan would work, he went out to the clubbing area deep in the maze of Firenze to celebrate. Free of all self-doubts now, the voices in his head finally stilled, he danced happily in many different bars and discos, pausing only to call Maya every once in a while to talk dirty to her. The strangest affair of his life. Eventually, he found himself in a chill-out bar, a laid-back place called Dormiglione, or Sleepyheads. The lights were low and the mood sedated. Soft glows of light and quiet ambient trance music pandered to those who shied away from the bright colors and pounding fury, preferring conversations that were liquor-dulled or drug-sharpened. The seats tables were all soft yet stable and could support patrons if they wanted to dance, sit, or make love on them. It was a lounge for higher-class, mellowed-out depravity and voyeurism. Rabbit loved it immediately. First thing first, though, he made his way to the men's room. Well-known drinker's fact, drink a pint, piss a quart. He still had not noticed Bianca following him from one place to another, her outfit always changing, at least one article of clothing swathed with what she carried in her little candy raver backpack. Never the same in one bar as the last, hair always altered by glitter pomades. She took up a spot in a dark corner and pretended to implode drunkenly, watching Rabbit vanish into the men's. The bathroom had a dimly lit antechamber with payphones that kept the bright lights from beyond from intruding on the calm of the lounge outside. Passing through it into the bright sterile whiteness, Rabbit came up short. Peter Gattoni stood at a urinal, the only man in the room. Peter Gattoni turned and looked at him, his eyes dull from a long night, but recognition flickered. "I'll be damned. Leighton, is that you?" "Fuck. So much for Plan A. Plan B is looking like homicide, with the body locked up in a stall propped on the toilet seat." Rabbit smiled. "In the flesh, Gattoni." "Christ, I never thought I'd see you here." "I've heard that before." "You know, Leighton," he shook himself off, zipped himself up, and flushed the John. "There's something I've always wanted to say to you." "Is that right?" "Yep." Gattoni was slurring a little, and he staggered a bit on his way to the sink. Washing his hands, he looked at Rabbit in the mirror as he talked. "It's about when we went to high school. Christ, that seems like so long ago. Wait, it was long ago, wasn't it? Shit, what have I done with my life? Shit. Look." He paused to rip out handfuls of paper towels, way more than he needed, to dry his hands. Rabbit locked the restroom door and moved slowly toward him. Gattoni turned to look him in the eye, suddenly sober. "I can't tell you how sorry I am, Leighton." Like a record skipping, Jared stopped. "Look, I know it's way too late for it now, but I mean it. I want you to know that... Look, it was you or me. Brendan, he had us all beating up nerds and people he just didn't like. And I know it sounds like Nuremberg or something, but I really was just going along with it. To be honest, I kind of felt sorry for you. But what could I do? If I didn't do it, I'd be next." Rabbit stared at him. The hate began to drain out of him, and he didn't know what to do. The look in Pete's eyes was of genuine remorse. "When I saw those school killings on the news," he continued, "you know, Arkansas, Washington, Alaska, and Mississippi, then Columbine, then all those copycats, more and more kids doing it because the news kept showing it. Next thing you know, if it hadn't happened in a whole year, they'd show the last one again just to keep it fresh in everyone's minds so the next pissed-off kid would consider it a solution. When I saw what happened to all those kids because they pushed those other kids too far, it got me thinking. I decided that if I ever saw you again, I'd tell you I was sorry." Rabbit swallowed. Gattoni offered his hand. "Well, I'm sorry." Rabbit stared at him for a long moment, then struck in a blur of speed, jabbing Gattoni in the eyeball with his middle finger. Reflexively, Gattoni bent his head forward and put his face in his hands, crying out, and exposed the back of his neck. Rabbit stepped sideways and pushed his victim's head a little to make room, and judo chopped the neck under and behind the left ear with the heel of his hand. When the motherfucking cocksucker hit the tiles, Rabbit grabbed him by one ankle and dragged him across the floor to a toilet stall where he bent down, grabbed the other ankle, and hoisted him up off the tiles to dunk his head in the toilet water. Gattoni thrashed wildly, but Rabbit held him steady, lifted a leg to kick the toilet lever and flush, lift and drop him face first. Gattoni fell, collapsing loudly onto the wet floor and lying sprawled as Rabbit walked out, happy, calling over his shoulder, "Sure, I forgive you. So long." Cruised out past Bianca, walking on air, and went back to his hotel.